On Facebook and YouTube, and
Say it with some enthusiasm, Ethan. Come on.
live on Facebook and
That's what
YouTube.
I'm
You want me to be
talking about.
enthusiastic about Facebook? Come on, man. That's so
Facebook just crushed
like
their earnings, dude.
2005.
I think it's a little bit more recent than that, but yeah, sure.
Being enthusiastic about Facebook? I don't know.
Maybe you're right. Yeah.
People are
We're
enthusiastic about
enthusiastic about the
Clubhouse.
people on Facebook. Yes.
About some of the people on Facebook.
Yes.
On you crazy.
Your listeners. I'm enthusiastic about your listeners on Facebook.
Oh, yes.
Maybe not true. The people behind Facebook always, but they're working on it. They're getting better.
Yeah. It's the water in which we swim. We've got Nicole Loftus here. Did I pronounce your name correctly?
You did.
Great. And she is sharing an idea with us in the political realm, which we haven't talked about in a little while. I'm excited about that. This is behind the scenes on the Run With It podcast. This episode will come out next Thursday. If you'd like to hear the polished version in between, or if you'd like to hear it when it comes out, subscribe to us on your podcast player of choice, and you'll be able to find it there. And in the meantime, you get to hear us banter and stumble and have our normal Friday afternoon fun as we're making this episode.
Hey.
But I think we're all set here. You guys ready to start the recording?
Yeah, I think we've got that. I think we're going. You're recording, I'm recording, and we're live online. I think we're ready to rock.
All right, let's do it. Welcome to Run With It, the show that brings you untapped business ideas from successful entrepreneurs. My name is Chris Justin, and I'm here with Ethan Janney. Ethan, hey, how's it going today?
It's going pretty good, man. I was thinking about meme coins last time, and I'm still thinking about them. I'm trying to convince you to buy into Super Doge, the Doge 2.0, basically, that gives money to charities. Already raised over $100,000.
I don't know that I would start with gives money to charities. It's like 2% of the money's going to charities, which is better than most cryptos, of course. But
well, if you have something against saving the lives of people, then by all means, don't worry about it.
Well, I think you could probably do 50 times better than 2% if you really wanted to donate, which actually dovetails nicely into our topic today. Yeah. Tell us about Nicole.
Yeah, in today's show, we have Nicole Loftus, really impressive background, building her own companies in the past, but she's also got a new project called SkinX, a tech-enabled ecosystem that is ready to launch and get every American in the game investing in entrepreneurs, innovators, and job creators. And she's bringing us an idea today that has to do with the political space, which we haven't talked about a ton on Run With It, but I'm excited about this. I'm excited about anything that will get me excited about politics.
Well,
that's right.
And it's nice to talk about this in an off cycle since exactly. Biden has come into the presidency. Things have kind of died down a little bit. I'd say in a good way. I think a lot of people would say in a good way, but yeah, I certainly want to use the momentum that we've had to try and improve the political space for everyone, not just the people in charge right now. This is a really interesting context to go after because fundraising for political campaigns is massive. It reached over $80 billion in 2020 across state, local, federal government campaigns. There were over $14 billion raised in the contest for the White House alone. That was more than double the amount raised in 2016. So it's growing like exponentially. It's crazy. Given that, though, there's very little transparency for where the money is going, how it's being spent, and almost no accountability. I want to ask Nicole, when we get into this, about money in politics in general, because I think that there's probably a question about whether we should be trying to optimize this. But the idea that she's bringing to us here today is just holding politicians accountable for how money is being spent, bringing some more transparency into fundraising. Nicole, what made you come up with this idea?
Well, I think like all great ideas and all great entrepreneurs and innovators, the idea forms over time, right? It's not like a eureka moment where everyone likes to think that's what it is. But if I were to go back in time, it was when a very good friend of mine in Illinois was running for a small office, and I won't name the office because I don't want to get this person in trouble, but he was in politics running for office, raised a bunch of money. I helped him raise money from people who were generous and that believed in him, and he lost the election and decided to take his election money and go do a trip to Utah skiing with the money that he raised in the election. And it upset me personally because I personally canvassed and went door to door with him and got supporters. And this was many years ago. And I thought,
you'd be less upset if he invited you to go skiing with him. I just throw that in there.
No, and I wasn't invited, for the record. But I did. I would have been even more guilty. I would not have been able to enjoy myself on that trip because I knew where the money was coming from. But it was.
I didn't even know this was a true thing. I mean, thank you for bringing this to our attention that once you've given money to a politician and the election's over. I've been frustrated before. I think that's something that has made me a bit disillusioned, is getting really excited about a candidate. I won't say who, but there was a candidate I was very excited about, and I was just given regular donations, doing my best to support the cause. And I guess I was disappointed. I don't think he did anything with the rest of the money that was immoral or anything. I was disappointed that he lost, like he didn't fight hard enough. I was fighting, other people were fighting, and it just didn't work, You
bring up a great point that I hadn't thought of, is that part of the idea we need is for them to be transparent on how they're spending the money. And you're bringing up a great point that what if they aren't spending enough money to win? What if they decided to budget their dollars because they wanted to leave more in their war chest, right? And this happens too, where if a candidate figures out, there's no way I'm going to win this race, they actually pull back on spending on their campaign because they can save that money for their next election cycle in their war chest, basically their personal bank account. So I think you bring up a really great point. You were rooting for them to win that seat and in that election, and you were disappointed. But if we were being transparent and you could see how he or she were spending the money, maybe then you could say, I know that he pulled back when it looked bleak.
Yeah, or maybe I could see, look, he did his best. He did exactly what I would have done.
There you go.
And I'm fully ready to continue to donate the next time.
Positive way of looking at it.
Literally the next time that politician came and asked for money, I was like, I don't know. I think I probably literally gave, like, if anything, maybe 1/20th of the amount that I had given previously.
So the problem that you're highlighting here, Nicole, is that we have no way of really controlling or knowing how politicians are going to spend the money that they raise from us. I want to take a step back and ask the question of, why do we need this money in politics? And does it really make sense for us to build a business around optimizing that money, as opposed to using that effort to try and change the political system such that we don't need to raise so much money and waste it on Facebook ads?
Yeah, I think I agree with you 100%. I would love it if someone could, by the next federal presidential election cycle or even the midterms, be able to put caps on spending, or to change the game and say, you know what, you're going to be allotted X amount of dollars and everyone's allotted the same amount. But that is, I think we are decades away from that happening. It's going to be a long fight. We have bigger fights to fight in the meantime than that one. So if I'm looking at what I want my representatives in Congress or in the Senate to be working on, there's other things I think they should have on their agenda than this. Yes, I'm with you. Wouldn't that be lovely if we could do that? But in the meantime, we all know, because we're all entrepreneurs, we could be faster at solving this problem in the interim, right? So I think getting this platform could be up in weeks. There's software out there. We could do a plug and play and get something like this up and going. It's not going to be weeks before we solve the problem of people spending too much money in campaigns. But I'm with you 100%. I would love it if we could solve that problem.
So it's what we're imagining. It's not for, ideally it's for all the campaign funds that they raise. But the thing that you're talking about launching within a month or something like that, that's one where we have a portion of the funds that they're fundraising, which we say are abide by these rules, basically. Like, this is the platform, the funds go to the politician, but at the same time, everything's reported and there's a certain amount of transparency, much like we look at with, publicly traded companies today, right? There's probably some sort of reporting mechanism that they're going to have to adhere to, right?
There is, but I think more than that, I think I was trying to think of a good example, and you guys could probably help me. But, once there is a platform out there, once Twitter existed and one candidate started using it, whether it was at a municipal, highly local school board level, or it's at the president at the federal level, right? Everyone started using Twitter because it just made sense. You couldn't run for any office and not use it. And it's true with, there's other, what's a good example? If you're a restaurant, you don't go into the restaurant business now without having some sort of a Grubhub, DoorDash, right, delivery service, right? It just becomes something that is adopted because both sides of the marketplace see a benefit from using it. That's what I'm saying. If we create something that makes it so easy and it's viral, it's once one candidate uses it and we use social media to say, hey, if you're not willing to use this, then that means you're not willing to be transparent. You kind of can, shame people a little bit into using it. And if they're running against someone who's willing to use this platform and be transparent, I think adoption would be pretty speedy. And we see this with a lot of other companies, that once you make adoption a call to action and an indicator that they are in the game, then it spreads like wildfire.
So I think I largely agree with you. I'm going to push back, play devil's advocate.
Good, please do. This one more time.
Yeah. So I see campaign spending as a nuclear arms race of sort. Yes, it is helpful in some way, but we're already seeing that in order to be competitive, you just need to throw way more money in every election. People are tired of hearing the same message, though. It's not like it's super effective. When how many phone calls did people get over the course of the 2020 general election? That's just phone calls. I mean, Facebook ads. I think that there definitely is some return on investment, but the amount of spend needs to be greater than the other side, and that's just going to keep escalating. So, well, what you're saying is, and one other point that I wanted to bring up,
but again, you keep trying to solve a different problem, whereas I'm focused on one problem. Well, right?
It's
like the
not
amount that's being spend is a problem. You're right, but I can only solve one problem at a time as an entrepreneur, right? So the problem is whatever you guys want to spend it. But now I just want to make it transparent. And then once we're transparent, then we can tackle the next part of the problem.
Yeah. And I agree with you again in general. It's, I guess it's a sequencing thing perhaps, but I also wanted to highlight one thing. You had mentioned that it's going to be decades potentially before there's some sort of major campaign finance reform. I am more optimistic than that.
I hope
with
so.
HR1, the For the People Act. I think that will go through the Senate as well. And that is good.
So.
That's aimed at reining in super PACs as well, which is, that they can basically spend unlimited money. So that's just an aside. If you are interested in that as a listener, go check that out.
Yeah, super PACs is one big problem, but actually having each campaign capped at what they can spend, which is what I thought you were saying. You hate the fact that they just keep. And what I hate is that now when you watch different races, you go, ooh, this guy's running for mayor and he raised 3 million. The other guy raised 500,000. Even in these local mayoral races, people are like, oh, wah, wah. The guy who only raised 500,000 is going to lose. And they just stop supporting him because he didn't raise as much money, which I love. Chris, was your point that it's like, okay, that's not, it's not a good way to gauge whether someone's going to be a good mayor or not.
Right. All right. So I've made my point. I'm going to come back. Let's get into your idea here.
What did the devil? I didn't quite get the point.
The devil's advocate here. There is.
What did the devil say? What was the devil advocating in one sentence?
That this is the wrong problem to focus on.
Oh, okay, got it. All right.
Potentially that. Yeah, we should. If you're going to be spending several years to build a business around
solve the problem of how much is spent,
solve the upstream problem of spending money in the first place.
Here's a way to make you feel better, Chris, is that let's imagine that if you have to be transparent with how your money is being spent, maybe the money, if it's egregious how much money is raised, what if we can make the money that's raised put to a good use? So part of this idea is that whatever isn't used in that race, the candidate is being challenged by his donors to donate the rest of that money to not just 2% of it, by the way, but the rest of it, whatever's left in the war chest gets sent to a nonprofit or another organization, or maybe even back to the donors. I don't know. That's something for us all to brainstorm on.
I love that you brought in the background story on this, and it keeps making me think of solving kind of what you just alluded to. What was the initial problem, right? You had an inside look at what happened to the leftover money.
Yeah.
And, it'd be interesting too, if you could just even modify the process such that if there was leftover money, you could get it back, or at least say, okay, you don't get the money back, but you get to decide where it goes, right?
Exactly.
Would you like to fund my trip to Utah to go skiing or my next campaign or, whatever.
Yes. Exactly.
There are some analogs here that we can call out in different industries. One, the obvious one that comes to mind for me is Givewell, givewell.org. It's a meta charity, perhaps you can call it that provides a lot of transparency into how charities are spending their money. Mm-hmm. If you don't feel like researching, okay, what's the best place to put my donation, you can go to Givewell, and they have all these metrics to be able to tell which charities are most efficient. And yeah, what you're describing reminds me a little bit about that of just using your money in a financially responsible way. The other one that comes to mind for me, more on the political spectrum, is Blueprint. It's blueprint.swingleft.org. You can infer which aisle of the political spectrum, which side of the political spectrum I'm on from that. But I'm looking at their page right now, and each quarter they have a different blueprint, a plan for you if you were to make a donation for how that money would be allocated. And you can get into the details if you want to, but they make it relatively large blocks. So 30% right now, it's saying engaging voters in Virginia, 30% fighting for fair maps in key states, 40% keeping Virginia blue. And again, if you open it up, then they call out some of the specific races and exactly how they would use that money. So there is some drive toward this, which I think is a good sign that there's appetite for it, right? Mm-hmm. I felt comforted donating to Blueprint last election cycle because I didn't have to think about it. So yeah, I think you're onto something overall.
And along those lines, I don't know if you liked Act Blue the last campaign. I loved Act Blue because I could give to Jamie Harrison in Atlanta, as well as, I could just and I had one account set up and I could just keep giving there, and I didn't have to go directly to the candidate's website. So that idea of making it really easy was fun too. So there is an appetite for it.
I've got a devil's advocate on that Act Blue type of thing, and that is, and clearly we're not I don't know what you call it. We're not hiding our political affiliations. Yes. I'll put it that way. but I would say, one of the issues that I had with Act Blue is donating to a particular political campaign that I was supportive of, and then all of a sudden I would get this sort of donation. They'd get another email about something to donate, and it's like, wait, is this going to Act Blue? Is this going directly to the candidate that I'm supporting? Mm-hmm. Is this going to support this other politician? I find it quite disconcerting, just in general, that whole realm of emails coming to me about politics. And apparently there's some sort of law basically that like politicians can spam you, like it's okay for them to just like send you random emails and then get you, shuffle around all these email addresses and share them with everyone. So I don't know. There's drawbacks to that kind of system, and maybe we're here to solve it.
So going back to Chris's point, in my current venture, we are changing a massive system. We're bringing venture investing to the public. We are fixing the system with, how do I say this? We're building a mechanism, a platform, a brand new ecosystem out of white space, right? And that ecosystem will show the big system that there's an appetite and that there's a need for change. Chris, you're absolutely right. We are focusing on one problem when there's this bigger monster systemic problem here, right? That is bureaucratic and full of red tape and going to take a lot of work for us to fix. But if us and your listeners who run with it we'll take this idea and build this new ecosystem out of white space using things that already exist, right? So it's not totally new. The white space isn't all that way. It's a little gray. Then that sends a message to the big system that their time is for change, right? You've seen this in how many other big systemic changes in our history, that I think we have an opportunity to do more than just writing letters to our representatives by fixing this problem here, getting the transparency going, and showing the good work we're doing. So going back to one of Chris's original devil's advocate moments, do you think there's truth to that, or do you think that's BS?
I think that's a pragmatic approach. I think that it's you have a lot more control taking on something like that, as opposed to just throwing your hands up in the air and saying that,
do you think the system, people's running the system will get a message and see, it's like, it's undeniable that if we want to get reelected, we're going to have to play this game with these people. Because,
I think that has been shown going back to the Obama campaign, right? That was famous for its grassroots movement and how much was raised by small donors. So I think that there's evidence that there's room for that. Your other example about funding and financial markets, it's everyone at this point knows about the GameStop story from Reddit, fueled by retail investors. It's impressive what a lot of people can do if they band together. So I think that there's room for that. I think that it's more accessible for the individual to make an impact that way. And I'm glad that you're grounding this, idealism, or this, because sometimes that idealism is actually an excuse for inaction. And
speaking of that, we got to talk about getting this started, right? So like, if we think it's going to work or we don't think it's going to work is kind of a moot point if we don't do anything. And of course, we actually aren't doing anything. We're kind of asking other people to do it. But what the part we're playing in this system is, thinking about and actually putting out on the table some of the actions that we can take to get this thing started. So I'm just trying to think, what would I do if I was going to get something like this started? I think maybe I might start with one politician, right? That maybe is got like a fresh, exciting following or something like that. Like, these elections have so many candidates now, and there's so many different things going on. Buttigieg, right? Like, I remember Pete Buttigieg. Like, he was a candidate that kind of like came out of nowhere, but then all of a sudden he's like really big, and a lot of people are excited about him. Oh my God, this guy's gonna be president. Obama was kind of like that back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of presidential candidates these days kind of have that story. Like, you're like, who is this? And then all of a sudden they're going to be the president. So, kind of latching on to one of these stories, these kind of Cinderella stories of somebody emerging, and going to this person, and saying, hey, you're trying to, there's no politician that's not out there trying to be trying to put forth that they're ethical, right? So it's like, okay, if your premise is that you're kind of the ethical candidate, we've got this platform, let's get you signed up for it. Let's have you be the first person that's going to do this while promoting it while you run. Does that sound like a good start for this? Is that the first step, is to look for a candidate that we can latch onto?
I think that is definitely a doable plan. And I know people are, to use the baseball analogy, are fans of base hits instead of grand slams. But as one of the few, as a Inc. 500 number 8 entrepreneur with the 8th fastest growing company in the country.
Okay, wait a second. We got to take a moment to celebrate. Woo! Chris, come on.
One of the few
impressive.
women ever.
It is very impressive.
I tried bringing that into conversations,
Excellent.
with
as
waiters at any chance I get. But I clearly grew a business fast, and very, very fast. And the way I did it was doing exactly what you just said, Ethan, but in multiple places at once, right? So why not have that be, why not do what you just said, but at almost every tier of an election? Do it at a local, hyper local, like super local, small level. And what if we had these seeds planted at multiple different levels? And it was like, yeah, I heard about the guy who did that. Oh no, not the one that was running for president, the guy who's running for state Congress in Iowa or something, right? Like, why to have it be that viral moment? Why not I don't think it's going to be hard to get do you think it's going to be hard to get a candidate to agree to use this and be the one that sticks his neck out and says, hey, I'm going to call on my competition?
I think that I think that what will be difficult, just to get their attention, right? There's got a lot of different things going on, and so I'm sure there's all sorts of people coming to them with offers about, hey, this is your next biggest thing, and then on top of that, devil's advocate to my own suggestion, if you're just getting it started and you're maybe using them as a use case and you're going to have to work out the bugs and things like that, avoiding sort of becoming a part of their little political system. Maybe they're trying to take advantage of this and how it works, and let's report it this way, okay? A way that's more advantageous to the way that they want to do things. So we don't know whether it would be hard to get a politician to agree until we try. And so, that goes for any ideas.
I've asked a few, and all were like, please call me the second you get this thing up and running. I'm like, I'm a little busy right now, but, and, we use, at SkinX, we're using, and when I think about my first company, I had to raise $2.5 million just to build a brand new system from scratch. And what I see now that we're pulling off the shelf and plug and play and just putting pieces together, from Salesforce to Plaid to all these other technologies that exist. Typeform, my God, Typeform has changed. I mean, what we used to pay to, I sound like an old lady, but what I used to have to pay to make a form, and now you've got, you can get a form in an hour and it's gorgeous. I think we could test the hell out of this thing before anyone's really using it and get all the kinks out. But so I talked to someone who was running for mayor of a small town in Illinois about it. I've talked to people who are running for state Congress and people who are running for federal office. And some people who've been funding candidates forever, since before Obama, so for, many years.
The way
people who worked for the Kennedys, who said this would be something that any candidate would love to say, challenge the community to do. So right. I vetted it, and that they say, but saying they're interested in actually signing on the dotted line and putting their neck out is another thing.
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, how do we know that what do they have to do to put the skin in the game to get started?
Another way of saying that is, what's the incentive for them to actually do this? They're saying that they would want to, but are they saying that because they believe that they would actually get more donations from that,
yes,
or increase their likelihood of winning?
Both.
Both. Okay.
That's what I heard.
Because I want to donate to something that feels credible. Right. I would rather donate to something that feels credible than something that I don't know where my money's
And it's
going.
a walk the talk moment. Like you just said, I think, Chris, you had said, everyone says they're ethical, right?
Right.
But you're saying, you know what? We'll be so transparent with you. This is kind of like, I'm dating myself again, like a Ross Perot moment. I don't know if anyone knows who that is, but
yep.
He, was a bit of a trailbaut running for office.
Is he like a Civil War character?
Oh, that's really funny. Disconnect. But no, and or like I'm not going to date myself again.
That's fine.
But
it's fine.
The idea is of saying, let's simplify this down to the barest level, and I can show you how ethical I am by being one of the first people to use this new system that allows you to see where I'm spending every dollar. And then if whatever I don't spend, I donate and give it back instead of me keeping it for my next my next election.
The way that you presented it and saying that you presented to these politicians, I don't know whether this is true, but this gave me the sense, I have this feeling deep down inside me that most politicians, like when they first get started, they really are idealistic. They really are, want to be like completely ethical and all this stuff. And then it's just the system starts being the system. And then they're like, I don't know, that guy's doing this. Maybe I have to do this. Maybe a really great book, which I can recommend, but I cannot claim that I have read its entirety because it's huge, is The Power Broker. Are you guys familiar with this book?
I've not seen it or read it.
Oh yeah, check it out. It's about a man named Robert Moses, who is kind of famous for being the behind the scenes builder of New York City, like literally determining where all the highways and the public parks and the projects and all this stuff went down. And the story, you know, as it unfolds, you know, he just becomes like this he's ruthless. I mean, he's just the most ruthless of Machiavellian characters you can imagine. But at the beginning of the story, he's an Ivy League, you know, young, fresh guy on the rowing team who just tries to make change through presenting people with logical ideas, you know?
Yeah.
And so I don't know, it's very interesting. It's interesting to see if we can imagine a future where we can actually take advantage of people's natural desire to just, you know, go things about an ethical and transparent way and win, you know?
Yes. And we've seen that the American people do enjoy a fresh face who hasn't been lost their idealism yet, right? Who hasn't been part of the swamp, quote unquote, who hasn't been part of DC, you know, bureaucracy and the way of doing things, like Buttigieg, although, you know, he was a mayor. But I think you're onto something there. I think that's, you know, you can have someone say, and I think it would be fun. We see a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of business people ultimately running for office, and it would be great for them to say, you know, this is an entrepreneurial endeavor, this is an innovation, and I'm going to show you what a business person I am. Almost every one I saw in Illinois, and I live in New York now, but I was from Illinois, was claiming to be a business person. All of their materials, I don't know if this is the whole Donald Trump residue or what, but it was like, you know, they were focused on the fact that they had experience in business, not politics. And I think transparency in business has been only growing, and to say, just like this, and this, now we should have transparency in political campaigns as well.
Let's talk about some of the numbers here, the value of the solution. You're in a numbers business now, largely, I'd say. So you're better poised than most to be able to talk about stuff like this. You had mentioned that you're thinking 5 to 10% of campaign contributions going toward a service like this. Where did you come up with that number?
Well, I benchmarked some of the other campaign aggregator services, and some of them are in the high teens, almost 20%, that you have to pay as a candidate to get people to raise capital. I've heard from some candidates that they expect that they have to pay, they're going to lose 50 to 75% of their contributions. They have to do manual canvassing, manual fundraising, the old-fashioned way, which unfortunately is still, you know, they host an event, or they host, you know, the overall cost, what they net fundraising when it's not electronic experience, and it's not just a cold donation they didn't have to put anyone on a phone talking to anybody, could be up to 50-60% that they lose.
That's huge,
isn't it? I mean, that's why it's costly to run a campaign, but not so much anymore, because when you have, like Bernie did, however many millions of people putting $35 donations, uploading, that didn't cost him really anything except making a website, right? The game is changing, but still, depending on the race, it could require a lot of local work that's costly. So I thought 5 to 10% would be very reasonable, as an adjusted, right? So if you look at your entire campaign that you're running, some of your campaign contributions are going to cost you 60% of that contribution. Some might cost you 1 or 2% or nothing because it came online. But when you balance them out, I didn't think that would be anything anyone should balk at. And the fact that we're getting it on both sides, I thought would be interesting too.
So we're talking about taking, you said like 10 to 15, is that what it was? 10 to
15%.
5 to 10%. Now,
so a blended 10, let's say 5 on each, right? So
does that include, like, what happens if there's like credit card fees involved, right? Like, do we take after credit card fees or something like that? Just to get a little bit more detail.
Yeah. Well, and I, in my past life, not this business, but the business before, we were, you know, doing $3.5–4 million a month in business. Average transaction size was $1,200. So that's a lot of transactions we were doing. And most of them were on credit cards. So we found ways to reduce the merchant fees on the credit cards. And I thought it would be fun to have a credit card company or two or three to sponsor this, just another idea in the business plan, that they would be willing to, because they love transparency, they would be willing to reduce or waive fees for our platform for, first time users or something like that. But I would think that would be a fun sponsorship play you could make with an Amex or a Visa or a MasterCard, Capital One or someone like that.
Yeah, you can certainly negotiate the fees down. I think they start typically at 2.9% plus 30 cents. How low were you able to negotiate yours down?
Below 1.
Below 1. Okay. So decent margin there. I'm looking at
that also comes with scale, right? So in the beginning, it would be more costly for us, but that's an expense on our end. So I think the 5% comes out before, to answer Ethan's question, before our, we take 10% off the top.
I want to take a little aside here. What does it look like to have that conversation to negotiate down to 1% with a credit card company? Is that something you're doing personally? Do you have an advisor? Is that just something that happens naturally as you grow? Your sort of business associates and advisors saying, "Hey, yeah, you can negotiate this down. Just ask." What does that negotiation look like?
It depends. When it was my first company and it was me and my amazing accounting team, no entrepreneur does anything alone. I had a killer accounting team, and we we're very low margin business. And so anywhere we could pinch a penny or two or three. Our clients, though, were also JP Morgan Chase and Citigroup. We were the exclusive supplier for all of Citigroup's promotional products, and ultimately also JP Morgan. So we could leverage that to get a lot of information and learn and position ourselves right with the merchant banks. And then the prices kept going down, and we would outbid it out all the time. But our clients were blue chip clients. So, and they were using their corporate credit cards. So the likelihood that they would be paying their bills was very high. So every merchant was dying for our business because I wasn't taking money from John Q. Public, right? I was taking money from an employee of Citigroup who would likely get the bill paid by Citigroup, right? So I was cheating a little bit in that the nature of who held that credit card allowed us to get a better rate. But I don't think it would change much if we knew that this was the environment this was happening in, that we could leverage the mission of what we're doing here to get some better rates.
Right. Interesting. And I can't help it. And this is, I don't know if it's unfortunate, but the topic sort of keeps coming up in my mind, and I hesitate to bring it up, but the sort of cryptocurrency kind of keeps coming up. And I just want to bring up this idea, like, have politicians been funded in cryptocurrencies before? And I can't imagine that by the next election, there's going to be politicians that are going to be accepting donations in that format. And that's going to drastically change the role that these fees from credit cards and things like that take place. And a lot of times you can also sort of track, donors, whether you can anonymize them or not. Sometimes you can see different addresses and how much they're putting in and out of a particular system. Do you guys have any thoughts on that? If you don't, it's fine.
No, I hope we don't. I don't think we're ready for it yet. But Ethan, I know I'm you and I are on different sides of that, as very much so. I'm not ready for that yet. So I'm hoping not. But you did bring up a really good point. So everyone who runs for office, I think it's at the state level, any state offices. I don't think mayor, but they do have to report at state and federal levels of offices who donated the money and their address, I think, because we have to make sure that no one gives more than, I think, what is it now, $2,500 or something like that.
There's a limit. Yeah.
Right. So there is a tracking system. And a year ago, when I was toying with this idea, I talked to someone about us tapping into like an FTP upload in a way to that national system that everyone uses and does their uploading to, which I think feeds into the IRS. I can't remember which federal office it feeds into, but anyway, there is a world where we could access that information. To your point about crypto being so easy to track who's spending the money, there is documentation, at least at the state level, who's making these donations. Anyway, sidebar.
I wanted to call out another competitor of sorts here is WinRed, and they're infamous of late, given some of the tactics they use to get recurring donations.
If you're blue, all you do is act. If you're red, you win.
Yeah, exactly. They're famous for these check boxes that they automatically had checked that turns your donations into recurring donations, and some of them were even weekly recurring donations in the time leading up to the presidential election. Anyway, their transaction fees, they have it publicly stated on their website, 3.8% plus 30 cents. So that anchors us a little bit in it sounds like what we would be doing with this idea provides more value than just processing payments, which seems to be what WinRed is primarily doing. I guess
that 3.8% was only on the side of where the money comes in. Then they'd have to send the money to the candidate, and they could charge the candidate an additional 3.8. We don't know it. I mean, unless they're saying that 3.8 is all in. We don't know.
Well, they do say that it's all in. Yeah, they say that. Yeah.
Good. That's not bad.
That's the cut they take.
On a $100 donation, $95.90 goes to the candidate or organization, which is at 3.8 plus 30 cents.
I'm going to go a little bit deeper into the actions we could take. So we talked about, partnering with a particular politician. Maybe that's not going to be so hard to do. We can latch onto their stories. We get this thing going. Now, what about the nitty gritty? Like, this is like a software application. Is it like a phone app of some sort? Like the answers maybe are just obviously yes to that, but I don't want it to make it sound too easy to just like have an idea for a software and then just go to a politician and say, let's make it. So let's say I say to a certain politician, really a local politician that I really like, and I say, hey, let's get started on this thing. And they go, hell yes, I'm all in. And then I go, okay. How am I going to make it? Or like, how is this all going to actually happen? Do we have any thoughts on how that's going? We've talked on the program a little bit about partnering with developers and, wireframing applications and things like that. And I'm wondering if we could even dive a little bit deeper or give some other insights.
Are you asking me or Chris? Sorry.
I'm not really asking anybody because we don't like to put anybody on the spot and run with it. I'm putting the question out there. But if either of you has an idea, you can jump in. And if not, I'll come up with something.
Well, I'm a big fan of Salesforce, not to pitch anyone in particular, but I had no idea what they could do from a company operations perspective. It's so much more than a CRM tool. We're using Salesforce at SkinX as part of our backbone to run our company operations, but as well as, of course, CRM, which is just the beginning of what you can do with them. But there is a way on Salesforce that every candidate, as well as every donor, could be engaged and see their dashboard of the donations they've made. And then the candidate can keep up their dashboard of all of their spend, and which could be imported from however they choose to manage their books, right? They could use QuickBooks or Microsoft Dynamics AX or something like that. Could be fed right into their Salesforce, and any user's dashboard would come from a Salesforce. But that's only one of many that exist today that would require very little customized development. All of them are going to require some, but Salesforce wouldn't require much.
One idea that I'll jump
Chris.
in to buy you some time here. One way of tackling this that would require very little overhead would be to look at the political ad transparency sections, both on Google and Facebook. That may not be the majority of ad spend, but it might be a good chunk of it. Let's say, I don't know, maybe 20% of what candidates spend. I'm looking at Google's transparency report here. And if you look at the top advertisers since May 31st, 2018, number one here, Biden for president, it looks like it was 83,704,000 on Google. So again, I mean, that's not, Biden raised billions of dollars, So it's not the majority by any means, but there are a number of Biden related funds here that you can tackle. And what someone could do is scrape this data, pull it together, and compile it. I remember reading right after the 2020 election, AOC had mentioned, she lamented some of the House seats being lost by Democrats and how little they were spending on Facebook. The Allegheny County Representative Connor Lamb, I think he spent $5,000 on Facebook. And I was struck by someone in her shoes or someone probably on her team going and finding that information and calling out a fellow House member by saying, hey, you're not doing enough here.
Yes.
An organization like what we're describing could go and audit this kind of spend. You can actually see the actual ads that people are creating, and you can grade politicians based on how effectively they are spending their money on Facebook and on Google.
And in the end, when I brought up software, I guess maybe I'm making it more complicated than it needs to be. It's really just having a system to collect donations, and then having a system to go to the politician and say, you said you were going to, share how you spent things. So you basically need, the collecting donations part is relatively easy. There's all sorts of payment systems you could use, and then it comes down to maybe partnering with like auditors or making sure you have a good sense of what it takes to ask someone for financial reporting, maybe do some investigation in the corporate governance space, just to figure out, what kind of protocols are used there. Maybe my sister's actually a forensic accountant, right? So she goes into companies and tries to figure out where the fraud is taking place.
I think you guys are over.
Like
yeah.
Overthinking
yes,
it.
I do. I think we have a
Great.
template. I have a template, and there's 10 buckets that people usually spend money on in a campaign, and your QuickBooks account or however your accounting system files where it's a classic ledger, accounting ledger says travel, entertainment, staffing, advertising, blah, blah, blah. We could create new breakout advertising, to Chris's point, which is a great point. And really AOC's point, where are you spending your advertising dollars? Right. So, and so expand different categories on the ledger. But I think you give everyone the exact same ledger and say, how much did you spend? And they're tracking this because they have to report it. So it's right. But then I want to know, when the election's over, how much was left and where is that money going? That's a big part of it too. But so I think I know you don't like to say it's easy, but I feel like it's so much easier than that.
If someone from the Inc. Top 500 list, number 8,
now you're just trying
the
to
sort of,
feel good.
The woman, dark horse candidate coming in here, making it happen. If you want to tell me it's easy, hey, I'm feeling good about that. Yeah. I'm excited.
Well, and if I always thought I would always keep this for myself. I always thought if I ever wanted to run for office, this was going to be what I was going to do. But I am less and less interested in ever running for office. That, as every day goes by, it's just, I do not see it as a win. And I'm one of those entrepreneurs. I cannot do it unless my heart is in it. I have to be in it all the way for me to do what we all do as entrepreneurs. And I just don't think my heart would be in it. But so, yes, I would if I was running, I would use this as my platform to differentiate myself. And I think it would be easy. You wouldn't need a bunch of auditors or forensic accountants, no offense,
right.
But
my sister's got to keep her day job.
Sorry, Ethan's sister. But we just give them our own ledger. Our system has its ledger, which would probably mirror close to what they already have to report on.
Yeah.
And AOC knew what the guy in Allegheny spent on Facebook because he had to report it. So it's already being tracked.
Right. Perfect.
We're just bringing that data into our system and then sharing it.
I think that's a great place to wrap.
Now, I just want to one more thing before we wrap. I just wanted to ask Nicole, unless you really, really have to run. Do you have to run? Next 2 minutes, 5 minutes?
Me? No, yeah. I'm good.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I wanted to ask you, following up. We don't like to dish out platitudes on the show, but it was interesting what you said about things being simple, and I just wanted to ask you about maybe to expound upon, if there is a base to expound upon it. Is there something to the mindset of assuming things that are simpler than they are more complicated? To your success or to your vision of how people succeed, that like if you think it's going to be hard, you'll make it too hard for yourself. If you think it's going to be easy. Yeah,
absolutely. There's no doubt. I love that you said that. And I haven't heard really anyone say it that way. But you're absolutely right. I've met with entrepreneurs who were wringing their hands over a $14,000 loan, or wringing their hands over how hard it's going to be and hard it's going to be and how hard it's going to be. I said, you know what, please quit now. Hang it up. Go get a job. You're not cut out for this. Get the hell, stop. And so I'm so close with her, and she did stop. And she said that was the best thing you ever did for me, because I was so in my head on making it complicated. And now she has a lovely business that she sees as simple, which, because she sees it as simple, is doing really, really well. Isn't that amazing? Mm-hmm. So Ethan, I think you're absolutely right. I see it as simple because it's the simplicity for me is that I will not rest until it's done. Like, I must solve this problem. So that to me is the simplicity of it at its core. I'm going to make this happen, come hell or high water. And that is the simplest essence of why I get up every morning and why I work as hard as I do and make the sacrifices I make.
I want to use that as an entry point into a potential sore spot for you here.
Ooh, good.
If you'll indulge us.
I love it.
Your story, which we didn't talk too much about, but alluded to with number 8 on the Inc. 500 list. It involved what you now refer to as vulture capitalists.
Yes.
How do you see that tension between approaching something and thinking about it as simple? And do you see that contributing in any way to being taken advantage of by venture capitalists?
Yeah, I think, man, you guys are so good. This is like a therapy session, because it's something Ethan just said that I have this whoa aha moment that I think, because I overcomplicated my business, I let the wolf into the hen house, and I got scared. Okay. So I was launching my business. I went from 1 to 6 to 22 million in the first 3 years. I did it all with angel money and friends and family, and just bootstrapping and killing it. And then it was successful and it was profitable, and the industry loved it. And I had employees, and we were all just so in love with what we were doing every day. And it was a mission, and I was living the dream. And then I got scared because I started overcomplicating and said, whoa, we're turning a $20 billion industry on its head. How do you do that? It's like, you just did it, you jackass. Like, how do you not realize you just did it? I started complicating it, and I started imagining it wasn't simple, and I needed people smarter than me. And VCs are going to be so much smarter than I am. I can't wait to have a VC in my boardroom. Stupid, right? I had no idea.
Smart enough to grab some of your cash.
I mean, really. And I didn't know then what I know now, which I tell every entrepreneur, is to please take more time choosing your VCs than you do choosing a spouse, because you can always divorce a bad spouse. You can never get rid of a bad VC. There is no divorce in VC land. Once they run your business, they own you, they own your baby, and there's no way you can get them out. It's not possible. And our VCs weren't bad guys. They hate when I use the term vulture capitalist. They keep asking me to stop using it, but it really was nothing against them. They were running their business and doing their job the way they're supposed to do their job, and the way that system, back to talking about the political system, right? The way that system works. And I was in Illinois, one of the 47 states that's basically shut out of venture capital. You know, all venture capital goes to only 3 states. Most of it goes to 3 states. So in Illinois, there's less competition. They could be more predatory. Anyway, the point is that you guys helped me out here today, and you made me realize that, yes, by complicating things and imagining they weren't so simple, I thought I needed more help than I did. And I opened the door to making really big mistakes, and it would turn out to be fatal. I mean, my company survived. It was ultimately sold to a PE firm, and it's still alive and well and doing great today. And I'm very proud of it, and all that it can be. But and I wouldn't be doing SkinX if that hadn't happened to me. So again, it's another silver lining. But Chris, I'm not sure if I answered your question or not.
No, you did. You did. I think that it sounds like the insight that Ethan had brought actually resolved that tension for you and made it clear that it was because you let things get complicated that venture capitalists could get in. So yeah, and I'm struck again here by how oftentimes our most impressive entrepreneurs that we've had on the show, how simply they view their business. I think about Erin Hooley's episode where she just broke down e-commerce into, I think, 3 steps. And it's just, you just do these things. And if you do them, you're going to succeed. Just focus on it. Say no to everything else. Right.
It's so true. Did you ever read Al Reese's book called Focus?
No,
It's a great book, and it says that
you sold Chris on it already.
Already, yeah,
it's so good. And
Me too.
My co-founder Anna Belyaev, she's the one that told me about it, and she and I both are very big on guiding principles for SkinX, but I use guiding principles at Zorch. But El Reese says every business should be able to be boiled down to one word, and that's it. And at my first company, we boiled down our client focus to just 3 things. They had to match 3 criteria. And if they didn't match every one of those criteria, we wouldn't talk to them. So I'd have people who'd be like, I need to buy 1 million t-shirts. And I'd be like, sorry, I can't help you. They're like, are you crazy? I want to buy 1 million t-shirts. Like, sorry, you don't match that 3 criteria that we have. Making that, I think with focus and simplicity are siblings, maybe 2 sides of the same coin, right? Like you have to, if you're going to simplify it, you have to be so focused on what's simple about it. But I highly recommend that book too, Focus by El Reese, R-I-E-S.
What's your one word for SkinX?
Funding.
Funding. There it is.
Yeah, that's what we do all day, every day is we're going to be funding.
Well, tell us more about where people can go find SkinX and what you're up to now.
So we are just about to launch the app. We're general public, every American that's 18 or older with a bank account can become a Skinvestor. They can get into the venture game. We're bringing venture to the public. And so our app will be live here shortly, but you can go to skinx.fund to learn more and to get the skinny and sign up for our newsletter and be one of the first people to know about it, or reach out to me on LinkedIn and I'll let everyone know when we are ready to give everybody some skin in the game.
Great.
Perfect.
Nicole Loftus, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Ethan. I absolutely love what you're doing here. I think this is a necessity.
Well, we really appreciate it. Looking forward to talking to you again in the future.
Yeah, I'll be here.
Take care.
Thanks. Bye, guys.
So hold on for a minute and we'll
get
the recording set up.
Here, we'll wave goodbye to the Facebook and YouTube crowd.
Bye, Facebook.